What's up, guys? It's John with National Sports Entertainment. And I wanted to go a little deeper into what I think about the injury of Aaron Rodgers, only because they're really going nuts with this, having a field day. And I've noticed a few things that seem to tie in together. And actually, this article wasn't even up when I was just here a second ago. It's weird. It says 10 hours ago they had the Jets Rodgers picture up here. Maybe this is a better draw. I'm not sure. Anyway, I was looking into these different articles and I found them interesting. And with Rodgers, they're obviously talking about who's going to replace him. I think there's two theories. I have two theories, and I think both of them kind of write themselves. And I say it because, again, I have a feeling, just based off of how they're acting in the sports world, that they're trying to invoke race again. They did it, obviously, a couple of years ago with Kaepernick, and it failed pretty abysmally. But now it does seem like they're rerunning it a lot more subtly with Deion. And I noticed it in his speech, basically. He's basically saying, yeah, nobody wants us to win, everybody hates us, but we don't care. And that couldn't be further from the truth. He is loved by everybody. He's helped the HBCUs very, very much. But at the same time, he's received a lot of help from the media, and he's received a lot of help from... Yeah, that was a great battle. If you guys don't watch battle rap, this guy Frack, I didn't realize how good he was. He's insane. Anyway, he's acting like the team's being oppressed, and I've just noticed a lot of, and it's not just Deion, but in general, they're even saying, with Deion in college now, you're going to see a lot of black athletes getting more opportunities, which I thought was kind of funny. I didn't realize white guys were getting so many more opportunities. But they were referring to the NFL. Stephen A. Smith had brought it up, and a few other guys were talking about it, and I just don't see it. I don't understand. He's not the first player to become a coach, and as smart as a player could possibly be, I can't imagine Deion is that much smarter than all these other guys who, if you look at the history of players who became coaches, they all did pretty bad. Deion's just seems so forced here. And then you have him forcing these narratives saying, yeah, nobody wants us to win, but we're doing it anyway, and we're making our haters hate. There's who are the haters? I don't understand that line of thinking. Everybody has been nothing but supportive of Deion. So I can only think they're trying to use race. Of course, in the Super Bowl, these are the types of things I think they set up slowly. They had Mahomes hurts, and then they were able to say about 48 times, this is the first time ever both quarterbacks were black. And now we're going into this year, they're just really, it seemed like hammering that narrative down our throat. And then now we see the Bills owner making racist comments. So it just seems like they're really ramping up that news cycle. And I think it pertains to Rodgers for a couple reasons. Well, obviously, one, he didn't take their recommended medication, the arm jab, and that will get you labeled racist. Sounds funny, but it really will. People have used that as an argument. They've called people racist for not taking it, and it's basically like people's second default argument to anything these days. But what's interesting to me is this. Buried in the middle, and I was just talking about that for a reason. We have another athlete between the ages of 20 and 40 that's dead. And I hoped that they would go into... I waited with bated breath, hoping they're going to really go into some details here. And we're going to see the meat of the matter. And all the... as a construction site, there must be so many details. No. There was an accident and I left him paralyzed. And then he was on a ventilator. And I find all that really interesting just because... Again, this is exactly what happened to a lot of people that have taken this and had adverse effects. Again, you look at Damar Hamlin. And this guy's a former Bill. Again, very, very interesting. Now, if they would just once even propose it was possible. And again, my Bronny James video got just ripped down, and they're like, another one and you're out again. So I know you guys know what I'm talking about. So there are trigger words, but if they would just admit it was possible, that their recommendations are what is harming these athletes. Like, yeah, we looked into this. He got it on this date, and then there was nothing, and then this happened. Okay, great, but they won't even float the possibility. Now, if it's reversed, I'm surprised they didn't blame COVID's or Rodgers' ankle injury on the fact that he got COVID or something because he didn't listen to them. Like, that's how ridiculous they're getting with this. But my point is, if it's reversed, you're going to hear it all day long. That's all you're going to hear. So we're seeing a lot of politics coming into football again, and I think it's because we're in an election year. So, again, to me, this has always been the case with Mike Williams, not him particularly, but the way they handle this. They always just, whenever a young athlete dies now, it's just a quick, bam, he's dead, accept it. Let's tell you about his stats. And, of course, he had 223 catches. What's interesting is there was an article, a video with Stephen A. It was towards the top, too. Here it is. And it was 2 minutes and 23 seconds. There's a lot of ESPN videos that wind up being 322 or 223. I don't think that's a coincidence. But, yeah, I just think it seems like they're really trying to amp up the rate, I call it racial tension because I don't think it helps anybody, but just the race talk. And, as you can see, the first couple articles are all, we got Rodgers has nothing to do with race, of course, but I think it's going to all wind up tying together because my theories, I have two theories. Theory number one, the Jets sign Colin Kaepernick. Now, I think it would work because he is the reason that ratings fell down pretty hard. But at the same time, these the owners and the people that run the show, it's really Disney. And, of course, people behind that, the people that want certain narratives getting out, they don't care. They're going to do what they want, and they're going to try and just endorse it in some way. So how is Colin going to get endorsed? Well, right now we have a pretty sensational man just going across the league and proving his quote doubters, I guess, wrong. And he's a liked guy. He's controversial, but Deion over here. There's not many people that just don't like Deion Sanders. Like, there's a few, I think, that, might think he's cocky and things of that nature. And some might think he's, like, a little racist because of some of, like, again, the oppressionist views he has. But there's really nothing that, like, in my opinion, that people could really hate him for. He hasn't done anything controversial, he's done controversial things. He hasn't done anything corrupt. He hasn't done anything where he's been the subject of scrutiny. People just, he's there, and I think he reminds people of if they watch, like, a movie. I'd gone into this before. He reminds me of Remember the Titans meets The Replacements. Like, he replaced his entire team with guys that, like, make sense, right? But they might not have had all the experience, but he could see the talent, puts them all together, and then his coaching style, it reminds me of Denzel. So I just find the whole thing really, really interesting. Now, if there's a time to bring Kaepernick back, it's going to be now. Deion's going to get behind it. The pundits will get behind it. And then players, even fans that weren't they didn't like him too much, they're going to watch. They're going to watch just to see him fail. So it's actually pretty smart, in my opinion, to bring him back at this point. And I genuinely think there's a good chance that's what's going to happen. They haven't really thrown it around in the news much. It was brought in my Discord. A few people brought it up, and apparently his agents did reach out to the team, but they're still floating all the other guys around that, Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, Rivers. And I just think it would make a lot of sense if they got Kaepernick. Again, just based off of the way they've really been amping up, in my opinion, the black versus white type of deal. And I went into the Open. They the U.S. Open, it was in New York, and to me it was just odd the way they really, were comparing out of nowhere, even though she's been around for a little bit now, Coco to Serena. And in my opinion, she doesn't play like Serena. She doesn't have a wicked serve. She has great court coverage. She reminds me more of Caroline Wozniacki, but of course we had to do the Serena Williams comparisons. So, yeah, with Deion right now he said he's going to go, like, basically undefeated, I think. That was also in my Discord. It was brought to my attention. So, as you know, I'm not fading anything Deion at this point. I do think he's going to do really, really, really well. Whether he goes undefeated, I can't imagine they would do that. They could. I mean, they definitely could. it would just change the landscape of a lot of things. But I do think because of his leverage, because of how people are watching college football, they're watching Colorado. There's no doubt about that. And Colorado is probably the most exciting team in the entire nation. So they understand what they did, and they understand how valuable Deion is as the face of college football. And I think eventually he's going to move it to the NFL. But again, I think because of the timing, because of the leverage, because of the fact that it's an election year, and like I said, Disney, as you can see up here, Blockbuster September, Disney owns ESPN for those that didn't know. When you see it like this, sometimes it makes it a little more obvious. Like, damn, the same people that wrote Mickey Mouse, But yeah, Disney. Nobody was shocked by that, but I just wanted to kind of put that visual up there. But yeah, I think it's the perfect time to have Cap return. So, and not to mention he was Rodgers' biggest rival. So I think it would make perfect sense to bring him in on. It's in New York, so he's going to be liked. He's not going to get booed that bad, in my opinion, and he's certainly not going to cause ratings to go down. So that's my one theory. My other theory, and this one is a contingent one because it would require another team to make the Super Bowl. But last year I had gone into, when it was down to the end, I liked the Niners and Bengals. I was thinking Niners, Bills, and then I'm like, you know what? Niners, Bengals, we'd have literal first versus last, okay? We'd have the first player in the draft in Joe Burrow play in the absolute last in Brock Purdy. And to me, I just found that very interesting. What's also interesting is the picks between the first and last are 261, which is an inverse of the Kobe number. That number is used for everything. I don't know why. I have a theory that it's because A to Z, A is 1 and Z is 26. That number gets used all the time. But anyway, the first versus last argument does still apply if the Jets sign a guy. They have the number 2 right now, and that's good enough. That's second best you can get, if you get the Jets versus the 49ers with Zach Wilson. But I think they're going to get number 1. And there's only one guy that I know of that would make any sense. That's a first overall pick that the Jets could realistically get, and that's Jameis Winston. So I think there's a really good chance the Jets get him because then they have the first versus last, Purdy versus Jameis, and then they can go and show like how they both played in college. It'd be pretty funny to see the contrast, right? Like Purdy probably played for I don't even know who he played for, but I can't imagine he did that good or he wouldn't be Mr. Irrelevant. And Jameis had one of the best college seasons in the history of college football. So to me, that would be a really interesting narrative. So those are the two I'm looking at. And I think both of them make sense for completely different reasons, like I said. And again, I think this injury made no sense. Even these talking pundits trying to explain it away made absolutely no sense. They were basically like, yeah, when you get that calf injury in training camp, it could always be a precursor to this ankle injury, and it's a freak accident. Basically what they were saying about DeMar, freak accident. So it's really interesting, I had a theory, it's a crazy one, but I said, what if he's in New York? Maybe I was wrong. Maybe he actually did go ahead and say, you know what, I'm in New York now. I have to do what you guys say. If you say I need to inject this, then I will. Maybe the reason he went to the ground wasn't his ankle at all. Maybe he was feeling a little bit woozy. I'm just throwing that out there. Because I've never seen Rodgers over an injury, like a physical injury, just leave the game. Now, obviously, an Achilles tear you would, but that was the weirdest Achilles tear I've ever seen in my life. So, everyone's thinking foot ankle. We saw him walk off the field. He wasn't limping. And he went back to the ground. So if you're up and then you have to go down after you've already gotten back up, it's for one of two reasons. Your body can't support itself because something is torn so bad. So when you stand up, you're going to immediately fall back down. You're not going to choose, like he did, to lay back down. And the second is you get dizzy or something happens to the extent where you need to get to a stable position on the ground. So I found it very odd. Again, if he tore his Achilles, that's not something that just sinks in 10 seconds. He would have felt that immediately. Or he would have went to stand up and been like, and then just went down. He wouldn't have just stood up, kind of walked for a second, and then slowly on his own volition went back down to the ground. So I think people are forgetting about that very likely possibility. And again, we just see Mike Williams, former Bill, could be a little bit of a, tongue-in-cheek, for them at least, calm, kind of letting us know. But you can let me know your opinion. Like I said, there's been a lot of examples of players that have, plays ended and then they've kind of been fine and then they just go to the ground. They either collapse or they choose to go to the ground and they're kind of just sitting there for a minute. And in this case, again, it can only be one of two things. His body, some part of his body couldn't support him, and that's why he had to go back down to the ground, because otherwise he wouldn't have stood up to begin with. Or another thing, like I said, it could have been a physiological thing. Maybe he was feeling a little bit woozy. It is interesting, first year after they really came down on him. He's in New York, so I would think going to New York, signing that contract, there's a better chance. And I told people this before. I said, he could have caved behind closed doors. We don't know. We really don't know what might have happened with him. And it was more obvious with Djokovic because he was literally banned from events. Rodgers was playing these last couple of years. And so I really don't know if the argument's the same. I brought this up to people that are, they're like, oh, Kyrie's great and Rodgers. I'm like, well, the only one that was openly punished, no pun intended, for missing the Open is Djokovic. He was punished, and there's no doubt about that. Now, who knows? Maybe he got it, and that's why he just won. You never know. You really do never know. Again, they're not going to go from loving someone to hating them and then treating them great again for no reason. There's always concessions made. So, yeah, that's just my opinion. I think that definitely could have happened with Rodgers. I think it's really interesting that the way the whole thing went down. And then again, very, to me, obviously not as shocked and not as lost for words and unable to improvise. But it gave me Damar Hamlin-esque vibes, just the way they were acting with Rodgers and the way they're acting now. Obviously, they're just saying, oh, yeah, he hurt his ankle. But the whole thing to me was just very, very odd. So we'll have to see what happens. Some might say, well, if that, why would they roll him out for the season if that was the case? Well, if something happened, then I think he would definitely be gone for a significant period of time. And another thing that was interesting, I'm sure other people had to notice this, they didn't flash to him one time on the sidelines until he was on the cart. He was putting his hat on and they rolled him to the back. And I thought that was odd. I'm like, well, he walked to the sideline. I understand you don't want further injury, but, why are they bringing the cart out? They didn't even know anything yet. So I just thought it was weird, And again, the cart would be more necessary if he was feeling woozy and couldn't walk than, I have to limp. So to me, none of it made sense at all. And the way they showed him was just little flashes. Up here's him on the cart. Up here's him walking to the locker room. And we really didn't see him. That's not usually the case. When someone's hurt normally, they have the camera front and center showing every part of that, supposed injury. Showing the guy crying, showing him holding, showing the training team working on it. We didn't see any of that. We saw zero work on his ankle. We literally saw, again, stand up, go back down. We saw him walk off the field. And the next time we saw him was on the cart, and then they showed him with a walking boot. We didn't see anything in between. And it's not like they'd never show it or that'd be fine. But it was a new precedent for them not to show it. So I think all this happening at once is really weird, and I feel really bad for Mike Williams. I have a personal theory. I don't think it's a coincidence at this point, especially the way it gets treated. You look at any of these articles, and you go down and you see that they are at least a decent length. They go into details. Here's going into exactly what happened between Porter and his, I think it was his girlfriend or fiance. And then you click on this article and it's just so quick. There it is. That's the end of it. Again, he died, construction site. It was like Final Destination, just a falling brick. Accept it. It happens. Life is life. And here's his stats with his 223 catches. So to me, not buying it. And, I think it's going to start getting pretty out of hand as far as a lot of these talking points that are being made. But yeah, I think, again, at the end of the day, the NFL does what it does for reasons, but all we can do is try and understand where they're heading with the narrative. So, yeah, I think the Jets, their Super Bowl odds tanked. I might like them even more now, to be honest. I didn't really have them in the Super Bowl. Now I do have Jets, Niners, or Jets, Cowboys. Even though the Jets playing the Cowboys this week, that would be interesting too because it's their first week without Rodgers. Then if they played him in the Super Bowl, they'd be playing them in the first and last game without Rodgers. So, that could be a case. I like the Niners. Like I said, I've been liking the Niners. I think they make the most sense. I think they need to get Mr. Irrelevant in there just because it's never happened. And I think it makes much more sense to put him against a number one. It just never happened. It's never going to have an opportunity of happening again. Sure, they could draft a new number one guy and have him wind up playing Purdy down the road. But I think there's a good chance that they get a number one pick. And I think Jameis is the only one that really makes sense. And then you have Jameis versus Purdy. And I'm not saying the Jets are running to the Super Bowl. I'm saying I still think they're making the playoffs. And I think they're going, again, I think the defense is going to be the narrative. It doesn't matter who's at quarterback. It's like the Bears with Grossman. So him getting hurt, in my opinion, it slightly increases their chance of the Super Bowl only because Rodgers is a guy I don't see winning a Super Bowl. But I could certainly see, they might not win it, but I could certainly see first versus last. And I could really see Colin Kaepernick making his comeback and playing in New York in an election year. Don't forget, these things are very, very important. They go way deeper than sports. So I think both of those are possible. And yeah, Niners still looking good on the other side. I think it's all connected to Deion. And that's another thing. They had, again, Bart Scott, and he played on the Ravens, obviously, and on the Jets, so that's an interesting tie. He said, this team, Colorado, the Jets remind me of Colorado. They're polarizing the game. They're playing so differently. They're doing things on a different level. So I think that comparison wasn't just one he made. I think it was more, again, just a little bit of a clue of what to expect. Hunter's going to be interesting to watch. But yeah, Colorado's playing CSU, Colorado State. I'm going to do a video on that. It couldn't be more fitting that Colorado State is the team that they're playing. If you watched a couple videos I did last year, I went into Colorado State. I'm probably the only guy in the nation who watched them and knows a few of their players. It's a pretty funny, ironic story. Basically, their coach did the 180 of what Deion did, and I'll go into all that. It's pretty funny, though. But and it didn't work out for him at all, obviously. But yeah, to me, I think the Jets are going to, this is to get more, as if you couldn't already, get more attention on the Jets. And my two guys are Cap, again, because I think it's the perfect time to bring him back with Deion Mania. And the other guy, I think Jameis makes so much sense because I think first versus last is such an appealing storyline. And then you look at the two guys, Jameis is just built differently. The guy is the prototypical quarterback. If you're going to, from the ground up, build a quarterback, that's what he looks like. He's physical, he's fast, he's tall. And then you got Purdy, who's like, the dad bod guy. So to me, that's a really interesting narrative. And I think it could work. And I have a very good feeling that we're going to get it. So also, again, you see the 5 degrees of Deion. He did play for FSU like Deion, Jameis. So very good chance he gets back in the spotlight sooner than later. And, that's just what I personally believe. So yeah, for me, I think the Rodgers injury is bogus. I think if anything, it might be something else that, again, on prime time, they certainly don't want people seeing. So they're going to have to change it. They're saying he might return for postseason. I don't think so. I think the Jets are going to make a move pretty quickly. I don't think they're going to stick with Wilson. So I don't know if you have props on your book, like whether Wilson's going to be there by week, but I'd have him leaving pretty soon. And then, like I said, the Mike Williams thing's a shame. It's a shame it gets this kind of coverage, this kind of objective, it just void of objectivity anymore. I don't believe this. I don't believe Marion Barber died in a sauna or because of a heat stroke from a sauna. They say Brian Robinson Jr. was shot 2 times. I think he got 2 shots. Tony Saragusa, I went into that one. I know he was older, but I thought it was weird. Shannon Sharp kept saying how he had a big heart, and he literally died from an enlarged heart. these things are in plain sight. They use the word heart here with heavy hearts too. So, like, I don't know who talks like that. Just such a PR response saying fans with heavy hearts. So, brokenhearted. Okay, people use that. Heavy hearts. I don't know for like in the 1900s, but really weird. And I just found this article to be really weird, especially how brief it is. But people don't notice it because every day you're getting 2 or 3 deaths and they just throw them up there. And then you don't realize, holy crap, in the last month there's been like 12 deaths. So to me, I'm, again, not buying it. But Jets is going to be very interesting. And I think that, what Deion does is really going to help us see what's going to happen with other teams and what's going to happen in other leagues, the NFL. Again, it's not like he just has pool in college. He's everywhere. And I think they chose him for a reason. I think he's the perfect guy. I think he can appeal to basically everybody, and he believes in his team. He's got a lot of passion. So I think he's the perfect guy for the job. And I think it'll make a lot of sense, like I said, if they have him start endorsing players who had falling outs. Cap is obviously the head of that snake, and I do think that it would make a lot of sense. So you can let me know what you think. Which of the two makes more sense, if any of them. Like I said, I can understand if you think it'll be something more simple. I don't think it will. I think with this Jets team, they're going to want something that's going to be a draw, like not Wilson, but somebody, like I said, like a Cap. Cap would be a giant return. And if not him, I think the first versus last makes sense. I liked it last year, so, nothing's really moving me off it, especially if and when the Niners get there, it would make more sense. And I don't think the guy's going to be Burrow this year, so that's why I don't have the Bengals. But yeah, it'd be interesting. So very early theory would be the Jets-Niners, where we get the first versus last. So yeah, let me know, as always, what you think. If you looked into this and noticed something that I didn't notice, please let me know. I'm not perfect, so maybe Deion said something else, and you're like, oh, I think he meant this by it. I'm curious. I think he's trying to play the oppressionist kind of angle. It just seems that way. And even on the comments, like when it's like Deion says this, and people are responding like, dude, when were we rooting against you? We're rooting for you. Like, nobody is rooting for you to fail. So I find it all interesting coming around this time. I'll be going into picks, obviously. I just wanted to hit these articles because I thought all of them were kind of odd, except Mike Williams. I'm just surprised it wasn't buried even more under Messi, because it's Messi. That's more important than this guy's death, apparently. And that's usually how they act. So take care, everybody. Like I said, if you want me to go into any particular games, let me know. And if there's anything that you think was interesting that you noticed, please let me know. I just think all of it coinciding at the same time in an election year, just keep your eyes open. You might get blindsided with some ambush politics. On Twitter, people are using a lot of political jargon talking about the teams. So it should be interesting. So, like with Rodgers, people are like happy that he got hurt because he didn't take the vaccine. I'm seeing a lot of that kind of stuff. And then people on the other end defending him. So, and again, we don't know. We don't know if he did or didn't. That's the thing. I think there's a good chance he didn't. And let me know what you think of my theory. If it looked like, no, that was definitely his ankle. Or now that I think about it, maybe he was woozy. We really didn't see what happened. So, yeah, like I said, I never mind you guys if anyone has a disagreement. If you think, I think that wouldn't have made sense because of this reason, always let me know. And if you have your own theories, always let me know, because most my theories are derived from stuff that people bring to my attention. Like, hey, Kaepernick's agents got in touch with the Jets. And then I'm like, that's interesting. Deion was just basically talking about oppression. And who else talked about oppression? Same time, Jets quarterback gets hurt. All seems to coincide. Bills owner making racist comments. So it's interesting. Now, that's just my opinion. I could be definitely wrong. I've been wrong before. But to me, these things are worth covering because I know it's not a pick for a game, but it could really help us find the futures and find the value in. Sometimes the narratives are very obvious, but they wind up just happening. So if the Jets do wind up getting one of those two guys, I think I might be on the right track. If they get someone totally different or stick with Wilson, obviously, then I obviously don't know too much. But I'm curious who you guys think they're going to get and what you think about the injury, if you think it was real or fake. And if you don't think it was real, for whatever reason. Like, you might not have the same reason I do. I'm sure you might not. Like, I know my reason sounds out there, but to me it makes sense. So, I'm just curious everybody else's theories, and I find this whole thing to be just a little bit weird. So take care, happy earnings, and rest in peace to Mike Williams.